Friday Night Racing.
On Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
And you're very welcome along to this week's edition of Friday Night Racing. It's Geraghty here with you. Every Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock we stream live on all of our social channels, and then we broadcast it again on the radio and News Talk from 8 o'clock this evening. So as we speak, there is currently live racing happening in Dundalk. We'll get into that with Johnny Ward in just a couple of minutes' time. Johnny, good afternoon to you. How are you?
How are you, Ger?
So obviously it's in very, very unusual times that we're in. The decision was made to continue with racing this week, and so far it seems as if things are running quite smoothly.
Yeah, it's obviously not without its risks. I suppose everything you do when you leave the house at the moment is not without its risks. But to my knowledge, anyway, the Department of Agriculture is definitely backing that racing continues. I think the government wants as much normality as possible in terms of people working, and if they can work from home, obviously. But that's not possible in racing, and the industry is continuing on, and probably very reliant on the Order of Malta in terms of the services, the emergency services that it provides at the racetrack, without which the show couldn't go on. There's an interesting sort of, I suppose, situation in Britain where British racing had to stop, and they use the emergency services over there, and I'm sure there is probably a link between that and what happened. But so far in Ireland, obviously, it's less than 500 people per meeting. It's probably substantially less than that at a lot of meetings, and people kind of come and go. So when you go to the meeting, you basically one owner per horse, and a lot of owners obviously aren't going.
I think the band owners actually in the last 24 hours have said no owners now. So.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. That was actually missed. I missed that. So no owners obviously makes the situation better. Again, prior to that, they were quite strictly enforcing one owner per horse, and then the jockeys are quite spaced out in the weighing room. I've spoken to a couple of jockeys. They say that that's been very well observed. In fairness to people in racing, racing probably got a bad reputation with Cheltenham and everything, but I firmly believe Cheltenham would not have happened in Ireland. It certainly wouldn't have been there wouldn't have been a crowd there. I think the Irish authorities would have reacted differently. And in fairness to Irish racing, it's been very well observed behind closed doors, and the jockeys and trainers know this is a crisis.
You were in Downpatrick, I think, for the first day of racing behind closed doors, were you?
I was in Downroyal. It wasn't actually the first day, so it would have been the third or fourth day at that stage. And I just wanted to see how it worked and obviously report back from there. And maybe I went with the preconceived notion of trying to give racing a bit of a backing, because I think it has been kind of probably has gotten a bit of bad PR over Cheltenham and all that. And you certainly get the feeling from social media that people who went to Cheltenham, it didn't go down all that well maybe at home. So to go to Downroyal and see how it worked with a couple of hundred people there was a totally different ball game, and I felt it worked well. Now obviously I'm not a medical expert, but I definitely could attest to the fact that people are consistent with social distancing, and they're very conscious of it.
Yeah. All right, our guest this week is Barry Geraghty, who had a sensational week last week at Cheltenham. Barry, good afternoon to you. How you doing?
Very good, Dar. How are you?
Yeah, good. Listen, we should talk about the main story that everybody's actually talking about at the moment. What was it like being in the bubble at Cheltenham last week? Were you aware of the outcry that was happening back home in Ireland, or what was going on? What kind of information were you getting at that stage?
Well, it was all happening, and it all happened during Cheltenham. Really, there was no call for Irish people not to travel before Cheltenham, and we all were aware that the coronavirus was making its way across Europe, if you like. But there was no one was being advised against travel to England, especially. So we all travelled as normal, punters included, jockeys, trainers, everyone. But it unfolded as we were there, and I was there at 11 o'clock one of the mornings before racing when Leo Varadkar was, going through the procedure, if you like, of where he saw everything going, more or less shutting down, like closing down schools, all those things. So they were happening while we were away. And then we had to return, obviously. So whether it would have happened behind closed doors in Ireland or not, I can't say. But since Cheltenham, we all come home, it's very much been locked down.
Yeah, it's such a weird situation as well, where the English government clearly had a very different approach to what they were doing. They've changed tack in the middle of this as well, for loads of different reasons, and we don't really need to get into too much to that. But while that's happening, the racing is continuing. Are you Are you able to separate these two things, a global pandemic on one hand and the fact that this is your job, that you've waited all year to get some of these horses to the start line in form, and now all you can think about is going about your gig? Like, how do you separate those two things?
Well, I suppose the Wareham is a bubble itself, so you're very much excluded from the outside world in there, with the exception of the TV being on before racing. But when racing starts, the TV is on racing only. But when the flag drops in a race, it's like a footballer in a match. You know, your mind is completely focused on what you're doing. You can't afford to be thinking of anything other than what you're doing, because the risk is there. You need to concentrate on everything. So it takes your mind. And I suppose we were a bit cocooned from everything that was happening at home. You're only getting snippets. So you're hearing back, reports and what's happening and what's been suggested and what was being done. So I suppose it was two different worlds, really. Yeah,
and I think that's maybe one of the things that separates top-class sports people from the rest of us as well, is that they are able to concentrate specifically on the task at hand when so much is on the line. And I will talk about the racing in the actual races themselves in a minute, because it was an incredible week of top-quality racing. Have you been to any of the behind-closed-doors meetings back in Ireland over the last week or so?
No, I haven't. I haven't ridden since I returned. So I've kept myself in lockdown as part of, just to be sure, having returned from Cheltenham, but haven't shown no signs or of anything. So it's precautionary, if you like. But we're all trying to do what's best for the country and for everyone with what we're being faced.
Yeah, well, look, that's completely the responsible thing to do. Is it your plan to get back in if racing continues, that whenever the 14 days after Cheltenham or whatever the period you're in self-lockdown for?
Yeah, more or less, yeah. Just wait and see, and hopefully all being well. Hopefully everything continues to be well. But yeah, that would be the plan, and hopefully there is racing. But that's been monitored on a daily basis. So, it's an industry, unlike any other industry, that has to keep going if possible. Once there is no greater risk to anyone's health than there is any other way of life that is proceeding. So it's a day by day, though. If things become more serious, maybe there'll be a different situation.
Yeah, and I think that's the other aspect of this as well, is that the government are obviously under pressure to close a lot of stuff down, but they're equally under pressure to try and finance small businesses and as much industry as they possibly can keep going, because as every job falls, it costs the state, and as that multiplies, there's hundreds of thousands of people now have already become unemployed as a result of this crisis. If another industry goes, then suddenly everybody in that industry needs to be looked after too. So there's like a balancing act here between just trying to keep as much normal life going as possible, where it's possible to do so safely.
Exactly. I think the figure is 29,000 people employed indirectly or directly through racing. So that's 29,000 people who won't be on the live register as long as racing continues. You
can see why, if you're the government, there's a decision to be made, and if they're able to keep this going safely. Can I ask you the most important question of all? What are you doing about the boredom if you're self-isolating for the last couple of days? How are you getting through the days?
No, I'm busy. We've 3 kids here, so we're busy with them, but I've some young horses as well. So, no, I've plenty to do, plenty to occupy me, but it's been a busy year as well, so you're happy to take time out too, but you'd rather have it in different circumstances. Yeah, no, totally. And sorry, we do a dadcast. We've just done our first one. What are you doing with the kids to keep them occupied? Is there a teacher in the house who's going through the schoolwork with them? Yeah, they're good. They're doing it themselves. So probably just as well, because I'd be limited what I can do for them. But, no, they're in fairness, they're doing their share, so they're keeping up to date. But a lot of stuff is online for them. Teachers are emailing. There's results coming back, everything. So it is, for the kids, it's going reasonably well. And it's just good to get them out of the house, get them out playing, messing about, keep them active. No, 100%. You talked about having a few horses there. Is that the future for you, Barry? Is that, like, I know you've obviously famously been a breeder in the past and always had a few about the place. Is that where you see the next stage of your career after racing finishes? And don't worry, I'm not retiring you just yet, because there's a terrible thing in Irish media where we're like, oh, when are you retiring? I'm not going to ask you that, but like, do you have a plan in place for what comes next whenever you do make that decision? No, I don't have a plan as such, but I've always enjoyed. I wouldn't breed as such. I'm more buying young stock and producing them both on my own and in partnership with different friends. So I've been doing that for a long time and have had good success with it. So it's something that's always taken over. So it's taken over as it is.
You're not going to be trainer though. Is that definitely not part, or is that something you kind of getting sucked into?
Yeah, no. I enjoy producing young horses, point to pointers. That would be as far as I would see a training career go. I don't see myself trying to take on Willie Mullins or Jessica Harrington or Nicky Henderson or anyone like that.
Why is that? Because you obviously got a lot of experience.
Yeah, I'm 23 years, 24 years doing what I'm doing. And you try to master this career. So if you've spent that long trying to master one, and then when that finishes, to turn around and try and master another, I think would be a big call.
That's fair enough. Johnny, will you put some context on the kind of week that Barry had last week? It was 5 winners, another champion hurdle. It's a sensational Cheltenham career that he's put together, but what specifically last week impressed you the most?
Yeah, not bad for a lad that was supposedly coming to the end of his tether. Barry's obviously towards the end of his career now in his late 30s or whatever, but it was a phenomenal performance, and I'm not sure he liked me admitting to this, but Barry's 5-timer in 2003 was one of the big reasons I got into racing. For some reason, I backed a lot of his mounts in that 2003 Cheltenham, and he was definitely one of the reasons that I fell in love with racing and jumps racing and so forth. But I suppose there were different rides as well, and Barry's had his share of injuries over the last few years, like quite a few of his compatriots. But to just produce it on the big stage, I thought his ride on Champ as well, to be fair, and it had an awful lot to do with the 2 horses in front stopping. But I think, probably agree with me on this, I think he made a calculated guess that he'd just save his horse for the hill and kind of take a bit of a gamble that there would be something left. If he was absolutely flailing at the horse going into the last, his jumping was fairly hit and miss as it was, could have backfired, and he took a chance and it completely paid off. But he obviously had horses that were extremely well tuned as well for the week, and the horses were underneath him. But I thought it was an outstanding performance, and probably shut up a lot of people who would have doubted him at this stage of his career, and plenty more good winners left.
Let's talk about some of the winners then from last week, Barry. Let's talk about Champ in particular. I don't know if every win is exactly the same when you're as seasoned and as experienced as you are. And I've already done a 5-time at Cheltenham, but Jesus Christ, what an amazing comeback victory that was.
It was. He finished really well. But his jumping was, you could adequate, that's all you could say. It was through the rest. He didn't make any bad mistakes, but he was losing a half a length at a lot of fences and never gaining a half a length. So it was making life difficult for him. But as Johnny said, and he's right in it, that I couldn't commit him over the last 2 fences because I needed to get him from A to B. I couldn't set sail any earlier at full tilt because I needed to keep him in some level of a comfort zone to get over those 2. But by doing that, I had something left in the locker. If I had tried to chase the 2 leaders from the third last and made a bad mistake with either of the last 2, that was my chance gone. So I had to. It was very similar to Bobsworth's Gold Cup, where the 2 lead horses went off hard, and if you go after them, then you're not going to get home. So you have to take a punt, and you sit and you hold and you save a little bit up your sleeve for the finish, because that hill is a monster in itself. It's the hardest thing to beat in Cheltenham is the hill.
When you see that they're coming back to you, and as fast as they're coming back to you, at what point do you think this is going to happen?
Oh, it's a great feeling when you're 3 lengths down. So you're 3 lengths behind the 2 horses, and you have enough time to get to the winning post first, and it's you have it in the bag, and it's just happening. It's a great buzz. I felt for Rachel Blackmore. I really did. She was the first person to congratulate me. I know she was gutted because it was robbed from her, and through no fault of her own. But it happened to me. The exact same thing happened to me in 2000. Paul Flynn, who trains in Ballymahan in County Roscommon. Paul came from the next parish to beat me on Native Dara. He was 13 turning in, and he caught me in the last 2 strides. So I knew that feeling Rachel had. So that's all I could say to her. But that was a tough one. But you know, there's always winners, there's always losers.
It's true. And look, I mean, you know, it's which is your favourite one? Which is your favourite child? But like, is of the week, because of the way the victory happens. Is that your favourite victory of the week?
It was a great one. I've been honest, the champion hurdle. I had my reservations. I doubted that she was going to cope with the ground. The big thing in the weeks running up was I was praying for Cheltenham to drive for her. And I had a run around before racing, and I was thinking, she's going to struggle. The first horse I rode in the day, Chantry House, he seemed to struggle on the ground, and I thought if he struggled, she's definitely going to struggle. But wherever Nicky Henderson found the improvement in her, she seemed to cope with it, where she for a few strides in Kempton at Christmas, she struggled on really soft ground. So she was one that I didn't expect. It's the feature race of the day, plus it's the score on the board, which just means it's a successful race. That's what you want when you go there more than anything. Just get one, so at least you're going home with something. You're not going a blank. So to get one on the board, literally the feature on the first day, and then you can enjoy it a little bit more. You're not just. It takes a little bit of the tension out of it.
Right, that's interesting, because even at this stage of your career, you know, you've seen it all, you've done it all, especially at Cheltenham as well. There is still that nervous energy before a race as big as the Champion Hurdle, before the festival, until you do get on the board.
But you go into that meeting every year, go to Cheltenham, no matter how many winners you've ridden before, you're on zero, and you want to get one. And it's you know, you talk about, you know, sport being like a drug to people. It's the exact same thing. You crave and you long to get one on the board, because your season is judged by Cheltenham in a lot of ways, and you need to get one. And just to get one, I've been lucky to have ridden one each year since 2002, with the exception of the year I was injured. And you want to keep that up if possible. So I'm not a big man for stats, but it is nice to keep it up and not to draw a blank, not to go home empty-handed. So it meant a lot to get one, and then that just lets a little bit of gas out, I think.
Did this year mean a little bit more as well after it was a very serious injury where you had a leg break at Aintree last year, and you know, at this stage of your career, again, the guarantee that you're going to come back and be as good as you were, and that you're still going to be as committed to everything after an injury like that, there's no guarantees, I guess is what I'm trying to say, when it comes to this game, and particularly because that injury seemed so vicious at the time. Did this year mean a little bit more to you?
I wouldn't have thought that going into it, but I can't. There was no hiding the joy after winning the Champion Hurdle, especially. And I suppose, you know, champ the following day, Dame the Company, when it's just started to roll, there was no hiding the joy. So it must have been, but it was subconsciously. I wasn't aware of it until, boom, when it arrived, and you know, it was, you know, I was ecstatic.
And why do you think that was?
As you said, I was 6 months on the sidelines. I had an external frame on my leg for 14 weeks. It was, you know, it was the worst, by far and away, the worst injury I've had to deal with. The frame was torture. It wasn't, you know, it was not a nice. Every movement in it, as I was putting more weight on the leg and walking more, which you're meant to do, the wires that were going into the skin, they would tear the skin. So you wake up in the morning and the leg feels great, and you're thinking, oh, I'm in business today. But by lunchtime, it's in bits, and that was mentally, that was tough.
It sounds hellish. How do you get through that?
Very quietly. I was told very quietly. I was very withdrawn, which was. And once I got out of it, I actually had a screw taken out of it. We went to see George Ezra in Malahide Castle, myself and Paula and the kids, and I had a screw taken out of the front of my ankle that day, it was bothering me, but I thought that was standard. When it was taken out, the relief I got from that alone. So I had a great night at George Ezra with the family, great fun. But that was a massive difference just to get that out. So it was obviously troubling me big time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I have to say I was withdrawn. I definitely, you know, all you could do was just block it out. And when I did get it off, you know, it took a couple of weeks to get some strength back in the leg. But as I got going again, to get back running was a joy.
And is there any point along the way where you think, why am I doing this? I don't nothing left to prove to anybody. I've had an amazing career.
Yeah, it's not about trying to prove anything to anyone. It's just the enjoyment. I enjoy it, and I suppose maybe that's probably what came out with those winners in Cheltenham, is just that I enjoy it. I love it. It's it's a tough game when it goes wrong, but when it's going right, there is no better joy. Definitely the side didn't win in the champion chase, but he won the Tingle Creek earlier in the season, which is a great race. It's a race with great history, and there's a real buzz and just fulfilment. You enjoy it. That's what you do. That's what I've done for 23 or 4 years, and it's what you crave.
So there's no reason to stop. It wasn't. You're putting yourself through that awful time, but actually the reward isn't necessarily winning those big races. It's like competing in those big races and being able to be a part of that.
Oh, exactly. And you don't like to finish second, but someone has to be second, and you could give the perfect ride to finish second. And there is a certain amount of fulfilment in that. You'd like to do your job as well as you can do it, and that mightn't be good enough to win, but you can take enjoyment. Annabelle Fry was second in last year's Gold Cup. I enjoyed that. I couldn't do anything about beating the winner. He beat me well, but I enjoyed the ride in the Gold Cup. It was a good place to finish. So it's not all necessarily about, as much as we like to win, there is fulfilment in the job being done right and being done well, and just enjoy the moment.
Right, our guest this week is Barry Geraghty here on Friday Night Racing, brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie or follow the Twitter account @HRI Racing, and the hashtag is every racing moment. Barry, are you a better jockey now than you were 5 years ago and 10 years ago? Was there an earlier peak in your career that you're kind of getting back to, or how do you feel about that?
It's very hard to judge those things from the inside, but any of the older lads definitely will say that experience is no substitute for experience. And being honest, I would say there is no substitute for experience. Glenn Lowe, I got beaten on him in the Pretemps handicap 2 years ago. Just put his head in front going to the last, and he missed the last as a result and got beaten a short head. So I won it the last 2 years, the same race for the last 2 years with Sarah de Burley. And both times I produced him after the last. And being honest, that was the difference in those victories. So experience, there is no substitute for experience.
That's crazy that, you're 3 years ago, I would have said you were a very experienced jockey, and even still, like on Champ, for example, would you have won on Champ 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
Well, I compared it to Bobsworth, which was 2012, I think, his Gold Cup. No, it was 2013. So that was a similar ride. So you can't say across the board, but I definitely learned from that defeat in Cheltenham. And I would say that Dame the Company was ridden similarly, as was Epitant and as was St. Drive. So 4 of the 5 were ridden very much similarly, led after the last.
It is wild that you're still able to add this, to layer on these levels of experience at this stage. And I guess that speaks to the desire to keep going, and the thing that when you are having a screw taken out of your ankle, to be able to walk without pain, that it's your interest in the game that keeps that fire burning.
Yeah, it's all I know, and same for everyone else. But the time will come, and no more than Bernard or Alan Brogan. I've seen him on TG Carter recently. Similar thing as regards love the game, but it will end, and it's going to go on forever. But while it's going, I'm both loving it and enjoying it.
Yeah, Johnny, this is something that we talk about a good bit on this show, is that we actually need to enjoy this golden age of Irish jockeys that we have at the moment. Ruby obviously very, very quickly announced last year that he was going with a good long opportunity to say goodbye to Tony McCoy when everybody knew his end was coming. But there's this generation of jockeys, Davy Russell obviously another one, and they're not going to be around forever, but this is a golden age of Irish jockeys.
Oh, without a doubt, and probably won't really be replaced in terms of Paul Carberry, Ruby Walsh, Davy Russell, and Barry Geraghty. I think Davy's actually in his 40s now as well. So obviously that's it's quite old to be a national owned jockey to be riding, especially at the top of your game. Paul Carberry, Barry would again probably agree, the most gifted horseman probably ever to sit on a horse in Ireland, just out of this world ability. Ruby Walsh, possibly the best jockey we've seen. Barry's right up there as well. And, I suppose I got into racing when they were coming into their peak, and, you don't really maybe appreciate it. I certainly didn't appreciate Paul Carberry enough when he was around, because you'd miss him just every little mundane race meeting. Paul Carberry could light up something like that. But they would definitely have inspired, the next sort of batch of jockeys that bit younger, because, these are the guys that you'll be beside in the weighing room, and, great professionals as well. It's interesting to talk about Barry getting over his injury, and it's Jack Kennedy's had 4 broken legs already. He's only 20 years of age. It's quite astonishing. So, if Jack could be still going as strongly as Barry is, nearly twice his age, would be incredible. And I think there's a lot of inspiration to be drawn from listening to Barry there, because, others might have given up, but that drug obviously does keep you going, that drug of riding the next winner, and certainly riding champion hurdle winners and stuff like that. But it'll be a hell of a generation of jockeys to replace, and probably irreplaceable, to be honest.
Yeah, Barry, do you feel like, what do you think about those other jockeys? Because in most sports, they are absolutely your rival, your rivals to win big races, to win titles, to get on horses sometimes in some instances, and yet it seems like there's a weird camaraderie while you're all trying to slit each other's throats at the same time in the weigh room.
Yeah, well, that goes back to day to day, because, there's you have to look out for each other too, because if I'm looking out for Davy Russell today, he's the one looking out for me tomorrow. So it goes hand in hand, and we're all lining up, to do the same job, and there is risk involved. So you're looking out for each other, and like that, when some lad gets injured, we're all around helping out. We're travelling together. We car share, if you like. Myself, Davy Condon, Robert Power, and Paul Carberry, we shared for years, and Davy called us the Wolf Pack. So there's a good camaraderie between us, and good crack and good fun. But that's where it comes from. But there is, there's no quarter given when you turn into the straight with a race to be won. You will look after each other out the country, but as soon as the business end comes, it's win.
We were chatting to Tom Malone in the office a little bit earlier on, and he said that your mum and dad have a riding school. Was that always? Did they always have a riding school? Is that how they got into horses? Is that your route into it when you were a kid?
Well, my family would have. My grandfather bred horses. He actually bred Golden Miller, who won the Grand National and 5 Gold Cups. So that would be our early connection, if you like, to racing. But my parents opened riding school when I was about 11 or so, and it grew from there. And I suppose it gave me access to more horses, which that life then revolved around horses from the age of 12 or 13, and it went from there.
And how did you actually then become, who was your apprenticeship served with? What was the first yard you were attached to or working out of?
I started with Noel Mead when I was 16, turned 17, having ridden pony racing for a couple of years, and pony club, and worked at home. And so I started with Noel when I was just turning 17. And
how soon after that do you have your first winner? What's that sequence like?
I started with Noel in, I think that's summer, so I was 16, turning 17. I had my first winner 6 months later, and I think I got 14 or 15 winners between there and the end of May that season, so I had a quick enough start.
Right, so no doubts in your mind at that stage, I'm going to be a jockey, this is it now?
Oh, there was no doubts in my mind from, I'd say, about the age of 13. And there was no plan B.
Right. You burned the boats, basically. That was it. Right.
Completely, yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
But the right call. And as a matter of interest now, you mentioned you have 3 kids earlier on. Is this something that you would like to see them do? Or would you be insisting that they do have a plan B just in case?
Yeah, I suppose there's more emphasis on plan B now. Young lads are doing their leaving cert, where I left at 15. It was more acceptable then to leave school earlier than it is now, and it is better to have the piece of paper. It gives you more options, for different courses if needs be. So, no, I'd imagine ours will definitely stay in education. They enjoy their horses, but there's no one looking to be a jockey yet, which doesn't really disappoint me. I've seen enough hardship. I'm sure my wife Paul has seen enough hardship too that she doesn't need to look at another one. So no, but if that's the route they wanted to go, any of them, I would be fully supportive. But I wouldn't be driving them that way.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair enough. It seems like it's definitely, you made the right call burning the boats anyway, and whatever comes next for them and for you, indeed. We don't know how long this interregnum in racing is going to be off for. Are you keeping fit? Is that like something that you actually have to do to make sure that you're ready to go the next, whenever you do come out of your own quarantine, and that you'll actually be able to go back and have as busy a career in England as, you know, I don't know if Ireland's going to be exclusively where we're racing into the future?
Well, in the short term, it's looking like Ireland only. But no, fitness is something I'd keep on top of anyway. So even on a quiet week, I would run plenty. I'd do a session and a weight session and that in just at home here. So I'd always have plenty to do to keep me in shape. I'm active. I do everything, skip the whole lot. So I just keep busy.
Right. Okay. I know Johnny's got one last question for you here before we let you go.
I suppose, Barry, did you think did you go to Cheltenham maybe this year thinking that you had to prove any doubters wrong in terms of, you know, people kind of speculating that the end was nigh for you because you'd had so many injuries, and that it wasn't particularly satisfying because it's obviously you're so long in the game at this stage?
I don't think so, because it's not how it look. You know, you might have people, but you know, passing comment or making judgment on you, but no, it wouldn't be my way to be trying to prove anyone wrong. I just you want to do it because you love it. That's the enjoyment you get, and it's what you do. It's what you love. It's the kicks. That's the kick you get out of it. So, I suppose maybe it was nice to quieten a few doubters in the process, but no, I wasn't going there to, you know, with any frame of mind wanting to prove anyone wrong. I was just happy just to, you know, do the best I can do.
Well, it was a sensational week, Barry. Thanks a million for joining us and talking to us today.
Cheers, Jared. Thank you.
That's great stuff there from Barry Geraghty on the phone. A reminder, Friday Night Racing is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Johnny, we had a good week last week for the Tote Irish Injured Jockeys Charity Fund because we forgot to have a bet, so we didn't have a loser.
There you are. Yeah, it's you know, money back is often a victory, Ger.
Indeed. So our fund at the moment remains at €630. We hope that we can get back into the winners enclosure this weekend. So Irish action on at the moment, obviously in Dundalk behind closed doors on Friday afternoon. If you're listening to this on Friday night on the radio, the weekend's racing is going to come from Thurles and Downpatrick, and Monday we'll see the start of the flat season at Naas. Traditionally, if memory serves, the period between Cheltenham and Punchestown was horses that had missed Cheltenham getting ready for Punchestown, or horses that had been in Cheltenham kind of just getting some fitness back and to keep them ticking over ahead of Punchestown. Is that kind of what these races are like?
Yeah, like, so I suppose there are actually a couple of horses running in Thurles tomorrow in the big race. It wouldn't be a million miles off being Cheltenham horses by any means. But you know, Cheltenham being so competitive, you look at some of the handicaps at Cheltenham this week. They were essentially graded races. It was very, very hard to win races at Cheltenham this week. So the Irish kind of, you know, the Irish fixtures would be very welcome for a lot of trainers. I mean, even Downpatrick's big race on Sunday, which unfortunately they won't be able to have a crowd for. It's their big day, their Ulster National Day. You know, it's a 50,000 handicap. The Randox Ulster National Handicap Steve Chase. It's 50,000 grand for that. And Thurles, the race tomorrow that honours the late Pierce Maloney. You know, that's a grade 3 of 55 grand. So these are good races as well. And you know, Cheltenham is over now, and obviously the thoughts are moving to Ferryhouse and Punchestown. It's far from certain that either will go ahead, but at the moment, I suppose that would be the narrative for trainers here, short of it being a day-by-day thing where they're just hoping that racing continues. Yeah, so obviously it is day by day, and we'll keep everybody updated as things change. But for now, obviously you can watch Irish Racing live on tote.com. We're looking at a race. We're going to look at the Pierce Maloney Memorial Novice Chase. That's where your bet's coming from? Yeah, I like Dunvegan here. I know Pat Fahey had a good winner last weekend in the shape of Castlegrace Paddy, who won at Navan last Saturday, which honestly seems about 3 weeks ago at this stage. It was only 6 days ago. But this horse last time, he ran at Naas. He was very disappointed. Now, he's quite well backed. I have in my head that this horse needs to go right-handed. I think all his form is basically right-handed. He just doesn't seem to doesn't seem to function as best he can going left-handed. He was behind 0-10 at Naas, which is a concern, but 0-10 is a 3-1 shot now. As I look at the odds for tomorrow, Dunvegan is a 9-1 shot. I think that's a great bet. You know, I think he's more than enough ability to win a race this nature. He's rated 140, which will put him bang there. It's fairly competitive, and Emily Moon jumped brilliantly first time out. She's a 20-1 shot. I'd give her a chance as well, but I think he's a knock on each way bet under Brian Cooper at 9-1. That's 3-10 Thurles tomorrow, the feature race.
Okay, sorry, Emily Moon is the favourite. Is that what you said?
No, Emily Moon is 20-1. The favourite's
go on, yeah. What's the favourite?
Would have a chance as well, yeah. Size and Potsy, I think, is favourite at the moment. Look at that 5-2 for Robert Power, which would definitely have a chance. And 0-10 is going to be probably close to favourite. Size and Potsy, giving weight away, just might be a bit, tricky. He's had a couple of hard enough races relatively recently, but definitely respect as well. But I think Dunvegan is definitely the value in that race.
All right. Anything else over the weekend that you want to talk about?
Should mention, I suppose, that race at Downpatrick, obviously the big race. That's going to be very, very competitive. 15 runners, not ideal for each way players, but a horse that I tipped up at Gordon just before Cheltenham finished second, Bread and Butter, I think definitely has a chance for Gavin Cromwell at Downpatrick, and I think Gavin also has a chance with Yates Mardy. So Yates Mardy and Bread and Butter, two Gavin Cromwell horses, I definitely think worth a mention. Obviously looking forward to Naas on Monday as well, to start the flat season. And I suppose just to mention the Order of Malta, you kind of go racing, and I suppose first of all you forget how dangerous it is for the jockeys, and you listen to Barry there on about his wife Paula, and every day is a potential catastrophe in racing, really, because it's so dangerous. But the Order of Malta, you got to laud them as well for being there, and basically only for the Order of Malta the show wouldn't be going on. I'm just reading during our piece here about a hospital in London that's completely overrun now as this virus takes hold, and we're probably going to get to a situation in Ireland where the HSE is going to be ridiculously stretched, and as long as racing goes on, we have the Order of Malta to thank. All right, Johnny, we'll leave it there this week. Thanks very much for Skyping into us. How are you killing your free time here? What are you box set binging on at the moment? That's me. Yeah. To be honest, because I work from home much of the time, it hasn't been all that much different. And as long as racing is continuing, I have some work and something to look forward to. On Wednesday, I went out to Portmarnock. And yesterday I went to the 40 foot, and as much as you have to observe social distancing, I couldn't recommend it more to get into the water. It's just you just feel $1 million after it, and I honestly, it's not the worst idea in the world at this stage. If you can get to Portmarnock, was virtually deserted on Wednesday evening despite it being a beautiful day. So if you can get to the outdoors, obviously isolate, but get to the outdoors if you can. We're not on complete lockdown yet, and observe your social distances, but get out of the house if you can at all, because it's going to be a long prison sentence. Did you swim in Portmarnock? I got into the water in Portmarnock. It was honestly the coldest water I think I've ever experienced. And funny enough, the 40 foot yesterday just felt an awful lot better. Now, I'd walked in Portmarnock, and I kind of walked in my bare feet in advance of getting in the water. And it was myself and my friend, we were the only two in the water, which is no surprise. But boy, was it cold. But the 40 foot was actually relatively pleasant yesterday, and there were a few people getting in afterwards as well. And just for that reason, you just feel better after it. But it is quite cold, has to be said. All right, Johnny, good stuff. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, guys. Thanks a million. Friday Night Racing and Off the Ball brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.